Hello and welcome back to the supper table, the place where we discuss everything we're not supposed to discuss in polite company, including sex and politics, death, money, religion, and our most private lives. This is Dinner for One, a sub-series where I am in dialogue with not just myself, but with non-human beings. We're always in dialogue with someone and something. So we can never truly be dining alone. But um, here I am talking to myself again. I do that a lot. Uh, Today, I want to discuss something that I've noticed in online mom groups, which is this very unfortunately common experience of throwing a child's birthday party and having no one show up, no one attends. There are often mothers making posts in these communities asking if strangers will attend their child's birthday party because, of course, they don't want them to feel let down or like they're not being celebrated or like they don't have any friends. It's very heartbreaking. Also heartwarming because I do see too that people are responsive to this and have a lot of compassion and they will show up for these children. Um, and on the flip side, I know a lot of families who are overwhelmed by the amount of social events that they feel they need to attend, including children's birthday parties. Birthdays happen very often. I don't know how any of us keep up with celebrating birthdays. I personally feel like we should celebrate children's birthdays every year, but then once we reach adulthood, we just should celebrate every 5 to 10 years, depending, because that feels more sustainable to me when I consider all of the domestic labor involved in making every other holiday feel special and making everybody feel loved on Mother's Day, Father's Day, Thanksgiving, reclaiming all of those holidays for ourselves is a whole other form of labor too. If we have weird feelings about dominant cultural narratives involved. But yeah, so on the one hand, we've got folks who cannot get anyone to attend their children's birthday parties, and on the other hand, we've got folks who feel very burdened by the amount of birthday parties they feel social pressure to attend. And I think this conundrum is just such a potent example of the struggle we're all in around community and what it means to be part of a community, to cultivate a social life that goes deeper than just a social life and actually feels like nourishing, rooted, interconnected human relationships that we can depend on and that can help us grow as people, relationships where we can be our true selves and all of that. So that's how I make the distinction between a social life versus community. They do interact a lot, they depend on one another, the social life versus the community life. I kind of see the social life as a gateway to community life. Um, it's how we sort of date a community. Hopefully, those relationships do develop with time, but because of pervasive forces of alienation at large, it can be tough, and a lot of us do just kind of circle endlessly in the shallows of the social life and never move beyond that. And it's been a struggle for me too. I feel incredibly fortunate that it's funny because I feel like the place that I live is not the right place for me. I often feel like this community doesn't want me and my children here. Um, I often wish we could leave this community, but my younger self, to her credit, doubled down 8 years ago and decided I was going to commit to this place and I was going to make this our home, and no place was perfect. And that I just needed to establish longevity in order to begin to feel like I was part of the human infrastructure around me. And there was some truth to that. There is some truth to the fact that when we commit, when we just accept that where we are is where we are and our community is our community, um, social bonds happen organically. So I'm very fortunate that my children's birthday parties have been relatively well attended. And not all of those relationships run as deep or feel as close as I would like them to be. Parents are very busy. It's very challenging to hang out with people regularly enough to deepen in friendship. I actually only have one close single mom friend who has two boys close in age to my boys. So yeah, I can count on one hand the friendships that actually feel like they reach the level of intimacy where we are digging in one another's kitchen cabinets to find what we need when we visit each other's homes. That's a real threshold, an intimacy threshold to me. If you feel like you can, rummage around in your friend's kitchen cabinets, you've reached the next level of friendship with one another. And we've gone on family vacations together. We've laid in bed together and pulled tarot cards while the boys play video games and give each other permission to lean on the screen so we can have a moment's peace. It's wonderful. I cherish that relationship. Even there, we still don't see each other as much as I would like because of the busyness. So yeah, just want to recognize that this is a rarity, and it's very common for it to be a rarity, that level of friend family and that compatibility where like you really hit it off with a mom and your kids also hit it off. So many factors at play there. It's kind of unlikely that everybody meshes well when it comes to two families coming together. Um, but yeah, from my vantage point in my small town, what it looks like, and in a small town, it's like it's the same social patterns that we see everywhere, but they're just so much more palpable, right? So what I see here is that the people who have lived here the longest have the most active social lives and have the most robust relationships, the deepest relationships, and they don't really need new friends. So that's challenging. I don't get invited to those potlucks and parties. The families that have lived here for multiple generations. Also, where I live, a lot of people socialize through church. And I actually tried that. I attended all of the progressive churches here. There were no families with children for the most part, a couple here and there, but mostly it was old folks who I love being around, but they didn't even have a children's program anymore. And they felt badly about that. They wanted that, but they just don't have young families anymore attending these congregations. Also, for me personally, it was too difficult to hang with a patriarchal and monotheistic conceptualization of God. Just couldn't do it, just didn't want my sons exposed to that conceptualization of God. Doesn't land for me. So I tried, to just like embrace this place and plug into the social infrastructure available to me here. But anyway, that didn't work. A lot of people connect through organized sports. That is also irrelevant to me and my children. None of us are athletes. We did soccer for a little bit, and I loved it. I loved being a soccer mom. Children's soccer games are extremely ritualistic, so I was into that, but it's just me and trying to get two kids to two different soccer practices when they're not even really athletically inclined and they didn't particularly love it was a nightmare to me. So I try not to overcommit with the after school activities, and herein lies the problem, right? Like it is truly a part-time job to develop relationships when you're parenting. And I have a lot of willingness to treat it like a part-time job because I want those relationships, and that has benefited me. However, I continue to hit these walls when it comes to the fact that people don't have shared needs, or they don't have shared capacity or shared availability. Another factor here is whether or not people are partnered, because partnered people do rely on their spouse or co-parent to meet a lot of social needs. Um, and they simply do not prioritize friendship the same way that I need to as a single parent. Um, Add to that the fact that I live in a rural place where it attracts like introverts and outliers who may struggle with social anxiety more than people who live in cities. Anyway, I'm rambling a bit here, but I'm just trying to say that, I feel like we can do things differently. I feel like the conversation that is growing around intentional dating can also apply to dating a social scene, a place, and a community. And much like people try to bypass early stage dating because they can't handle the anxiety of not knowing what's going to happen or the anxiety of potential rejection, being rejected or rejecting another, and will just rush into a relationship. People try to do that with their social life and with their community relationships, and then are surprised, hurt, and disappointed when the depth that they desire is not there. They can also be very like avoidant in the sense that they don't reply to text messages, never prioritize making plans happen, or give up because they're so fatigued by how unnatural it really is. It really is to manage basic human connection through a Google Calendar. Um, of course, we all wish that we lived in a place where we were resting on one another's front porch with a cup of tea in the morning and just sort of stumbling into social activities and social engagement. But that is simply not the case for most of us. So in lieu of that, we do have to accept that it requires things like scheduling and availability and commitment and showing up even if we feel fatigued, and doing that with consistency over a long period of time. So yeah, how do we get people to show up to our children's birthday parties? And how do we feel more connected to the people who are attending the birthday parties we feel social pressure to attend, even though our heart isn't really in it? I'll address the first problem first. How do we get people to show up to our children's birthday parties? I think we have to start small. We have to start by being the person who says yes to whatever invitations we do receive. Simple visibility goes a long way in community. If people recognize you and they see you at a coffee shop, a grocery store, maybe, yeah, a spiritual event or some other kind of community space regularly, they're more likely to come up and say hello. Also, we have to be willing to initiate small talk. Small talk does a lot of heavy lifting. It is like the foreplay in establishing. I know I make everything about sex, please forgive me, but it is like the foreplay in establishing new friendships or acquaintanceships and community bonds. We need to ease into connection through universalities, like talking about how beautiful the weather is today. It's a form of micro connection. Um, and it's, hundreds of tiny interactions like this over long periods of time. We're talking months, we're talking several years, before we move from strangers to acquaintances and acquaintances to community members and community members to new friends and new friends to old, deep friends. And true connection is pretty rare, even if we're doing all of these things. So there's always going to be some degree of social closeness and social distance, and they all together culminate into a sense of connection in our community, the ability to invite people to children's birthday parties. So if you, like me, are constantly craving more depth and connection in your relationships, I feel you, but don't reject outright the benefit of those more superficial bonds, because they can grow into something deeper over time. And even if they never do, even if you're always surface level with some people and there's always that greater social distance, it's better than nothing, frankly. And it altogether fleshes out a sense of connection to the place that we live, the place that we call home. When it comes to feeling more meaning rather than just being burdened by social obligation, if you have too many children's birthday parties to attend, um, you can create meaning for yourself or remind yourself of the function of these traditions. I know that it feels a little ridiculous because on the more extreme end of the children's birthday party spectrum, thinking about the Kardashians or something like that, people there's a larger conversation about contrived childhood magic and how absurd children's birthday parties have become amongst the middle class and wealthy people in our communities. And as a poor person, I know that I often feel kind of intense anxiety about even the social pressure to bring birthday gifts to all of these parties. We don't have a lot of parties in our life, but there have been periods where there are more, and I'm like awkwardly trying to figure out how to like communicate to people that I cannot afford to buy all of these gifts. Um, Even in a place where there's like a lot of normalization of giving gifts secondhand, giving nature treasures and that sort of thing, I feel that pressure and obligation. Um, but when I think about it from the lens of like, this is a ritual, this is a tradition, what is the function of this? I do feel a lot more emotional connection. I can sense into the importance of it, both as a vehicle for, those micro connections that build relationships and help me feel like I'm part of my community over a long period of time, but then also for the child and for the family itself. you know, there are so few opportunities to share in the joy of parenthood with other people. Sometimes the only people we ever get to experience that joy with is a spouse. And I know this as a single parent because with one of my co-parents, we can have shared joy occasionally, and we're not together and we don't even like each other. And he's the only person in the world who loves these kids to the degree that I do, and who can experience certain kinds of shared joy with me around their milestones and the gift that it is to watch them grow as human beings, and even to celebrate their survival, every year that we have with them, the preciousness of that. And I am a proponent of a posture in community, again, no matter how close or distant those relationships may be, where the children belong to themselves and belong to everybody and nobody. They're not just my children or your children. The children are precious, precious members of this larger human family. And absolutely, I want to celebrate that they are turning 3. Absolutely, the parents who have been working in isolation and alienation to raise these families deserve to share the joy of a child's birthday party with the people around them who are grown enough to understand what that actually means. And, in the counterculture, there is a lot of grief about the fact that we don't have community, the village is lost, we don't have strong ritual practices or cultural traditions. And that's very true, but we do have these things. We do have children's birthday parties. We all know the happy birthday song. So you know what? I'm going to take it where I can get it. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Okay. I hope that that offers something as we, receive and put on children's birthday parties, but also as we're moving through peak wedding season right now in May. And um, yeah, I guess I'm just gonna leave it here and I will see you next time. Okay. Take care.